The Galactic Empire did not fear humanity. It tolerated them. Among the hundreds of species under Imperial rule, humans were an anomaly, a young, ambitious civilization that had clawed its way to the stars, refusing to bow to any master. The Empire, vast and ancient, watched humanity with measured amusement, allowing them space in the outer fringes of its dominion while ensuring they never gained enough power to pose a real threat. Then they killed her. Dr. Elise Carter was not a soldier. She was not a politician or a revolutionary. She was a scientist, an archaeologist to be precise, who had dedicated her life to understanding the relics of lost civilizations scattered throughout the galaxy. Her work had taken her deep into Imperial territory, to the planet Vioris 9, a world littered with the ruins of a race that had vanished long before the Empire's rise. It was supposed to be a routine research expedition, sanctioned and observed by Imperial authorities. Elise and her team had permits, official escorts, and clearance from the Imperial Bureau of Science. None of it mattered. The transmission arrived at Terran High Command in the dead of night, an urgent, garbled distress signal from the research outpost. Security feeds captured the moment of her execution, grainy, distorted footage of Elise on her knees, hands bound, her face streaked with blood. Imperial officers stood around her, their obsidian armor gleaming under the pale blue light of the alien sky. The commanding officer, a high-ranking noble named Lord Archeovaran, barely hesitated before giving the order. A single plasma bolt to the skull. No trial. No charges. No explanation. The footage spread across human space within hours. Every colony, every station, every world under Terran rule bore witness to her murder. The Imperial broadcast attempted damage control, issuing a vague statement about an unfortunate misunderstanding, claiming Elise had trespassed in a restricted zone. But humanity knew the truth. They saw the callousness in Varan's stance, the indifference in his voice. Elise Carter was no spy, no criminal. She was an unarmed scientist, and they executed her like a stray animal. The outrage was immediate. Protests erupted across human systems, calling for justice, for retribution. On Earth, millions gathered outside the Imperial Embassy, chanting a single word: war. In the corridors of Terran High Command, the debate lasted mere hours. The unified nations of Earth, the governing body that had long preached diplomacy and restraint, found themselves staring at a grim but undeniable truth. The Empire did not respect human lives. Negotiation was meaningless. Fleet Admiral Marcus Hale, a man who had spent his career warning of the Empire's inevitable hostility, stood before the assembled council and spoke with quiet finality. "They killed one of us and thought we would stay silent." His voice was steady, unwavering. They were wrong. The declaration of war was unanimous. Humanity had never fought a war on this scale before. Skirmishes, border disputes, even small-scale conflicts, they had seen those. But never open war against an empire that had subjugated civilizations for millennia. The odds were impossible. The Galactic Empire commanded fleets that blotted out stars, armies that numbered in the trillions, technology refined over eons of conquest. But humans were not an easy species to break. Across every Terran world, shipyards roared to life. Factories shifted to wartime production overnight, churning out warships, weapons, and armor faster than ever before. The Terran Defense Fleet, once a modest force meant for self-defense, transformed into a war machine. Enlistment skyrocketed. Scientists, engineers, hackers, and strategists poured their minds into new weapons, new tactics. Humanity would not fight this war on the Empire's terms. They would fight it their way, unpredictable, relentless, and utterly ruthless. And at the heart of it all was a single, unshakable truth. They had killed one of ours. Now we will burn their empire to the ground. The war began with fire. Humanity had no illusions about its place in the galaxy. The Empire was old, vast, and accustomed to victory. It crushed rebellions without effort, erased entire civilizations with a whisper, and carried the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds in its wake. Against such an enemy, conventional warfare was suicide. So humanity chose a different path. They struck first, hard and without mercy. The opening salvo came at the Imperial outpost of Jora 7, a minor station along the trade routes that threaded through the Outer Rim. It was not a military target, but that was precisely why it was chosen. The Empire had left it lightly defended, believing that no species would be reckless enough to attack. They were wrong. The ISS Revenant, a sleek, black-hulled warship built for speed and precision, dropped out of slipspace with a squadron of Terran corvettes. Before the station could even raise its shields, the Revenant's kinetic cannons roared to life, unleashing a storm of hyper-accelerated slugs that shredded the docking bays and sent Imperial transports spiraling into the void. Elite Terran Marines, clad in adaptive exosuits, breached the station's hull and moved with ruthless efficiency, gunning down Imperial officers before they could even send a distress call. Within 13 minutes, the station was a burning wreck, its databanks stripped, its survivors left drifting in escape pods. Humanity had delivered its first message. The Empire did not react with rage. It did not scramble its fleets or rally its forces. Not yet. Instead, it hesitated. For the first time in centuries, an enemy had defied its rule, not with cowardly rebellion, but with calculated aggression. The governors in the core worlds dismissed it as a minor uprising, a mistake that could be corrected with a display of force. The Empress herself did not even acknowledge the attack. And so, humanity struck again. Outposts fell in rapid succession. Supply lines vanished overnight. Shadow fleets, unregistered warships operating beyond Imperial detection, ambushed convoys and melted into the blackness of space before reinforcements arrived. The Empire, slow and ponderous, struggled to adapt. Its war machine, designed for overwhelming brute force, found itself grasping at ghosts. Admiral Marcus Hale, now Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Fleet, orchestrated the campaign with ruthless efficiency. He understood that humanity could not win through sheer numbers. They would win by bleeding the Empire dry, forcing it to stretch itself thin, to waste resources hunting an enemy that never fought on its terms. But the Empire was not a beast that could be wounded forever. Eventually, it turned its full attention to humanity. The counterattack came at Proxima Centauri, humanity's oldest colony and the gateway to Earth's core worlds. The Imperial Third Armada emerged from slipspace in a formation so vast it blotted out the system's light, a fleet of dreadnoughts and battlecruisers capable of glassing planets in hours. Hale had expected this. He had prepared for it. The battle began as the Empire intended, merciless and overwhelming. Planetary defenses crumbled under the sheer weight of Imperial firepower, and the first wave of human warships was torn apart in the opening minutes. But then something changed. The second wave arrived, not in formation, not as a fleet, but in scattered, chaotic bursts of slipspace jumps. Swarms of Terran attack craft weaved through the gaps in the Imperial formation, striking supply ships, targeting command bridges and crippling navigation systems. Then came the Hyperion Protocol. For weeks, Terran engineers had been refining the use of AI-coordinated drones, small, self-sufficient combat units that moved faster than any human pilot could manage. As the Imperial Armada pressed its advance, the drones activated. Tens of thousands of them, slipping past the front lines, embedding themselves deep within the enemy fleet. And then on Hale's command, they detonated. The Third Armada burned. The destruction was not total, but it was enough. Enough to halt the invasion. Enough to force the Empire to reassess its enemy. Enough to make them afraid. Humanity had drawn blood. And the war was just beginning. The Empire had underestimated humanity. Now it was paying the price. Across the Outer Rim, Imperial forces found themselves losing ground. Supply lines were severed, fleet movements anticipated, entire garrisons left isolated and starving. What had begun as a punitive expedition had turned into a quagmire. Humanity did not fight like other species. They did not break under pressure or beg for mercy. They adapted, evolved, and struck where the Empire was weakest. The Empress, for the first time in her 1,000-year reign, convened the High Council in secrecy. The chamber, carved from obsidian and illuminated by pale, flickering starlight, had borne witness to centuries of conquests and dominations. But now it held something foreign: uncertainty. Lord Archil Varen, the architect of Elise Carter's execution, stood at the council's center, his expression carefully composed. The war had been meant to be swift, decisive. Yet even as he spoke of eventual victory, his voice lacked its former certainty. Others, once loyal without question, whispered doubts. The humans were not behaving as expected. Their technology had advanced at an impossible rate. Their war doctrine defied every projection. And worse, rebellions were beginning to spread across the Empire, inspired by humanity's defiance. Some within the council urged restraint, a negotiated ceasefire, a quiet resolution before the war spiraled beyond control. But the Empress listened to none of it. She would not bow to an upstart race. If humanity refused submission, then they would be erased. Yet even as the Empire prepared its final hammer blow, humanity unveiled its own answer. The Aegis Protocol had been in development long before the war, an experimental fusion of artificial intelligence and quantum warfare, designed to disrupt and disable enemy infrastructure at an unprecedented scale. The Empire had always prided itself on its technological superiority, but it had grown complacent. Over centuries of expansion, it had built its fleets, cities, and military networks upon a singular foundation: centralized control. A single, intricate system governing everything from ship movements to planetary shields. An unbreakable web of authority. Humanity found a way to shatter it. On the eve of the Empire's grand counteroffensive, the Aegis AI infiltrated their systems. The first sign of disruption came at the fortress world of Vraxis Prime, where planetary defenses deactivated mid-battle, leaving an entire fleet exposed. The next came at a remote command station, where Imperial officers watched in horror as their encrypted orders were rewritten before their eyes, rerouting entire battalions into ambushes. Within 72 hours, the Empire's command structure fractured. On the front lines, Admiral Marcus Hale led the assault. His forces, once outmatched, now tore through the disoriented Imperial fleets, striking deep into enemy territory. He did not waste time with arrogance or spectacle. Every move was calculated, precise, a methodical dismantling of an empire that had ruled unchallenged for millennia. Then came the final blow. The Imperial shipyards at Valera 6, responsible for the construction of the Empire's largest warships, had long been thought untouchable, defended by planetary shields, orbital defenses, and an armada large enough to hold entire sectors in check. But Aegis turned those defenses against their masters. Shields collapsed. Automated turrets turned on friendly vessels. Communications dissolved into chaos. And then the human fleet arrived. It was not a battle. It was annihilation. As the last of the shipyards crumbled into the void, Hale sent a single transmission across every Imperial frequency. The age of your empire is over. And for the first time the galaxy believed him. The Empire was dying. It did not collapse in fire and fury, but in silence, in the cold recognition of inevitability. What had once seemed unthinkable, an upstart species challenging the oldest and most powerful force in the galaxy, had become undeniable. The war, which had begun as a punishment for defiance, had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. And the Empire was losing. Humanity did not grant it a slow death. Admiral Marcus Hale stood aboard the bridge of the ISS Dauntless, watching as the final battle unfolded before him. The Imperial capital, once the heart of untouchable dominion, burned beneath a sky thick with warships. Human forces had not come to negotiate. They had come to end it. The Imperial fleet, fractured and leaderless, fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. Their ships, once symbols of absolute power, now drifted as wreckage. Their once unstoppable legions found themselves outmaneuvered, outgunned, their every strategy anticipated. The Terran defense fleet moved with the precision of a species that had learned, adapted, and perfected the art of war in record time. And then, as the last of the Imperial dreadnoughts crumbled into the void, silence fell. Deep within the Imperial palace, the Empress watched the end of her reign unfold. She had ruled for centuries, her will enforced by fleets that had once darkened the stars. Now those stars belonged to humanity. The doors to the throne room opened and Hale stepped forward, his armor blackened from battle, his expression unreadable. The Empress did not look at him. Instead, she gazed at the ruins of her empire through the great glass window, her voice calm, distant. "You were not supposed to win." Hale did not answer. There was nothing left to say. With a single nod, his soldiers raised their weapons, and the reign of the Galactic Empire ended. The war was over. But humanity's future was only beginning. Across the galaxy, liberated worlds rejoiced. The Empire's former subjects, long crushed under its rule, now looked to the victors, not as conquerors but as something else. A force that had refused to kneel. A species that had defied fate itself. As the fleets of Earth pulled back from the wreckage of the old order, one truth remained clear. Humanity had been tested. And they had emerged unstoppable.